Is baby getting enough nutrient-dense foods to support healthy bone development? Cottage cheese is rich in protein and bone-building minerals to support their most rapid, biggest growth during their first year of life. Also, babies who start to eat common food allergens, such as cottage cheese, around 6 months old, may develop fewer allergies to these foods later in life. My name is Angel, and I've been a registered dietitian since 2012. All the information I share here today is for general information purposes. When it comes to making cottage cheese for babies, I want you to know that cottage cheese, while it's not iron rich, it is extremely great for bone building because it's rich in calcium and phosphorus and protein, which are all essential nutrients to develop strong and healthy bones. But how are we going to modify this recipe so that it's baby appropriate in terms of texture and in terms of safety? Because cow's milk protein is a common food allergen. So we want to be careful if we're introducing it for the first time. When it comes to serving cottage cheese for the first time to baby, you can actually serve it just as is. And even though it looks really lumpy, it's okay because babies don't need to have teeth to have something that's lumpy in texture. They can use their gums and mash it. For those of you who are a little bit worried about the bigger lumps, you can of course use a fork to mash it up a little bit. So I guess what I'm saying is you can either serve it exactly as is, or you can choose to use the fork to mash it to get rid of those really big lumps. And some people might choose to put the cottage cheese through a blender as well, though that's not really necessary to have a puree consistency. So this is as much as you can modify it. And it's nice and moist. And some parents who feel more comfortable with spoon feeding, you can actually just feed the child with a spoon. And I think this is what I would recommend if you're doing it for the very first time, is you want to use a baby spoon and you fill it to about a quarter full. So a quarter baby spoonful, and you put it directly into baby's mouth. And what I mean by that is you would just offer it to the baby, see that baby's interested in it, and then if the baby opens its mouth, looks at it, and kind of gestures for it, then you know that the readiness sign is there. You then put this into their mouth and you wait. You wait for about 10 to 15 minutes to see if an allergic reaction develops. And if there's no reaction in 10 to 15 minutes, then you can go ahead and offer some more. Now, that would be the first successful exposure where no allergic reaction happens. And thereafter, you would then continue to offer foods with cow's milk protein regularly. So it could be 2 to 3 times a week, so that tolerance to this particular food protein is maintained. And so there's a key phrase that you might want to learn. It's that you introduce it early and then you provide it often, early and often. But you would only start solids once baby is developmentally ready. So those readiness signs and cues are essential before you start any kind of solid food. All right. Now, for some parents who prefer to offer their baby a bit more of an opportunity to self-feed, there's a couple options. For parents who don't mind a bit of a mess, you can actually just put the cottage cheese directly onto the baby's tray table and let them grab at it with their hands themselves. But really young kiddos that are just 6 months old or so, they're not really going to be able to manage that because they haven't mastered the pincer grasp, which is where they bring their thumb and their index finger together to grab foods. But if your child is closer to 9 months old, then they may be able to pick up these little lumps of cottage cheese in their fingers. However, for babies even 6 months old, once they've established tolerance and you've given that first spoonful where they didn't have a reaction, then you can actually preload a spoon with, at this point, however much amount, and pick a shorter spoon so that baby can grab that preloaded spoon and then bring it to their mouth by themselves. And it's essential that you pick a spoon with a shorter handle because it's really difficult for a tiny baby to hold a long handle, rigid spoon like this and just kind of bring it to their mouth. It's a very awkward angle for them. So just be mindful of that. The long spoons are better for you to spoon feed. The shorter ones are better for baby to self feed. Okay, so in terms of for baby, we already established that cottage cheese is not an iron-rich food, but it is a common allergen. So now you know that for first exposure, that's what you would do the first time. And this is how you would modify the texture. There's not too much going on, and it's a pretty safe option to try out. For your littler ones, we've got the more mashed up kind of cottage cheese, and then there's a more lumpy straight out of the container cottage cheese, which is, this would be more appropriate for 6 months and this would be more appropriate for 9 months. But how would we offer fruit that's following that same general age category as well? Well, for the little one who's only around 6 months old, we may feel comfortable giving more of a fruit sauce. So this is just applesauce that's unsweetened, and we would offer the cottage cheese a little bit more mashed up with a fork with a fruit sauce like that. And then for an older child around the 9-month mark who has the developed pincer grasp where the index and the thumb go together, we can offer the fruit that we would serve the older kids and the adults, but we can cut it up so it's about the size of a finger knuckle. So it would be these smaller pieces that we can put. One that they can use their little hands. Just make sure it's nice and soft as well. One way you can check if it's soft enough is if you can pinch it in your hand like that, and it kind of just mushes. Like, imagine that your fingers are the baby's gums, and if you could mush it like that, then they can mush it. But sometimes, like melon, especially, like if it's a bit too hard, that may not be okay. And finally, if you're serving a round fruit is considered a choking hazard, so you can't offer it like this. You have to go lengthwise and cut it. Sometimes with these really big grapes, cutting it into these lengthwise quarters may not be enough even, and you may want to do an additional cut until it's more like this size. And again, doing the pinch test, you can totally break that up.